Welcome to Movie and a Beer, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in, and we have everything everywhere all at once. And I'm telling you, man, we have some great friends and co-hosts here to talk about this wonderful film.
Here with you today, this is Aaron. I am your everything bagel expert.
I'm Blake. I know what I want to say for the expert, but I won't. We'll talk about it later. I am your interrupting the podcast and getting previous cuts deleted expert.
Yes, you are.
Hey, and this is Brian. I know a thing or two about a thing or two.
Yes, you know more about those things or twos than we know those things or threes.
So 4 things?
4 things?
I know
three to 4 things. Wow, that's impressive.
So
It's like 9 more than I know.
It'd be like a median of 3 things.
Yes.
A thing or two about a thing or two. 1.5.
Well,
times
medium
Hey,
or large.
everybody, welcome to the Math Podcast.
Yes. As we try to figure it out, because everything everywhere all at once in this podcast called Movie and a Beer exists in a certain timeline and a certain time frame and somewhere in the multiverse. And we're going to discuss this film, which occurs outside of that.
Somewhere else, Aaron hosts this, and it's beer and also a movie, question mark?
Question mark.
Actually, it's beer and scotch all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, I'm not a guest on that one.
No, but no, this movie, it takes place across many iterations of the multiverse, and it's fantastic in every one of those iterations.
Splices it all together into one gigantic 2.5 or 2+ hour movie.
Even the sausage hands.
The sausage fingers.
Hot dog fingers.
Hot dog fingers. And they even call it that. They call them hot dog fingers.
They do call them hot dog fingers, yes.
We love to talk about films and shows and talk about beers and drinks and things on this podcast. And this time around, we brought 3 beers back down from Seattle that I was up there recently and really found some good, fun beers. And I knew we were watching this film. And the film's kind of dark. So I picked a couple of dark beers and then a really, really hoppy beer called Multiplayer Guild Collab IPA. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. But I'm going to tell you, dark beers went really well. These guys were like, why are we drinking dark? These are lighter dark beers. It's just roasty. And I think because of the mood of the film, it starts out just like, oh, you have a lot of sympathy for this poor Chinese immigrant family who's just trying to run their freaking laundromat, you know? And then it all goes to shit.
It's so much more complicated than it appears on the surface.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to plot spoil. I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Right.
I only ask because it is, as we're recording, a relatively newer movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I'm not saying it's good because of the twists, but the twists really help make a lot of this movie.
Yeah.
You get a lot more when you arrive at certain scenes and you go, what is happening? Whoa. Like, which is kind of like what the lead character Evelyn Wang is going through. Damn it.
Wong.
Yeah, it is Wang, not Wong.
Well, her middle name's Quan, which it doesn't help.
It doesn't help.
No.
But it is really interesting to see this journey this character takes, and the ways that this character struggles. You know, both with kind of life stuff, life circumstances, adult responsibilities, but then also like, you know, connecting with family members, even important family members. It's hard for our protagonist to just even connect with her daughter and, you know, tell her daughter like, hey, I love you. I'm here. You know, all of this, and to see the character go through this journey and grow through all of that.
She becomes everything all at once.
She becomes everything. She becomes everything everywhere all at once.
Well, the film really is an allegory for family relationships.
Right.
Right? And I think maybe at the root, they're saying that the family and those close relationships is everything. Everywhere all at once. It's the root of your life, whatever family relationships you make.
I will say, like, there are, outside of my family, you know, friendships, other people I've known that have influenced me and made me into a better son. So kind of in a sense, you know, we could take that metaphor a long ways, Brian, because
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, I mean, in my family,
If you want to really nail it, you'd be a better moon, but whatever. I'm not being that picky.
There's your bio family and the family you choose.
well, true, yeah, and each of them have been, you know, they say you're an amalgamation of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Everybody is deeply influenced by the people that are around us, and to think about, you know, what those influences mean and how they change us, and then what we bring to other people in a different context. Like how have I influenced my parents? How have my parents influenced me to be different as a friend for somebody else? This movie, I think, if you sit on it and think about it, it'll ask those types of questions. But there's also like nihilism, you know, like
A lot.
what is the inherent meaning of anything at all?
Yeah, we believe in nothing, Lebowski. We believe in nothing.
The pigs in the blanket.
So pigs in blankets.
Or the pig being
We're going to
walked
cut
down
off
the
your
hall.
Johnson.
Yeah. So from a production standpoint, this was not a lot of scenery outside of a few office buildings, right?
And a laundromat.
The IRS, the laundromat,
and a really telling
That was-
apartment.
a
that
van.
had-
And a cliffside.
Van
And a cliffside.
Yes. The cliffside
That's
is
right, a
important.
cliffside. Yeah,
But don't spoil it.
Well, no, I'm just saying though, and it's like you can tell a great story without spending a lot of money on making crazy CG stuff because this has some CG stuff, but it's done really selectively. I couldn't
There's a lot
tell.
of wire work.
I couldn't really tell what was practical effect versus CG, and that was a good thing because it doesn't. There's some obvious scenes that it's obviously just animation or whatever, but most of it is not.
Y'all, you want to know how? Okay, let's play a game.
Yeah,
Sure.
How many people were on the VFX team for this movie?
22.
I don't know.
I would say 3.
Maybe 3 or 4.
9.
Wow.
All the VFX, and this is from IMDb's trivia, all the VFX for this film was done by 9 people, including the 2 directors, with the majority of the shots being done by a core group of 5 people. None of the team went to school for VFX. They were all friends who taught themselves with tutorials they found online for free.
That's incredible. That's how people repair
Right?
toilets. That's not how they make movies.
YouTube's got everything, bro.
It does have everything.
Like that's which makes this movie even more incredible from my eyes. I don't usually look at production. I just Dan's been there. I will watch a movie, just give up any. I'll just suspend any disbelief to love a story. Shush everyone if they're like, "What's up with this scene?" Like, shush the hell up. I want to watch this movie.
Yeah.
But just it's beautiful. It's striking. It's just it's amazing visual. I love Marvel movies, and these visuals in this knock a lot of them out of the water. It's
a lot of
so
that's
good.
art direction.
Yeah.
And costuming.
I'll say, in contrast, a few weeks ago, to our loyal listeners, you might remember we were discussing the Atom
All
Project.
2 of you, and I'm one of them.
And I remember Brian had mentioned that some of the effects towards the end of the Atom Project like sort of got in the way of the storytelling. And here, by contrast, everything everywhere all at once, it's like, no, everything is in service of moving that story forward. The effects aren't there to detract at all. I was completely kind of wrapped into what was going on.
There weren't a lot of effects at all. I would say the only noticeable one for me was the bagel.
Well, there's the bagel, but the fight scenes and the other
You mean,
stuff
you
going
mean
on,
bagel,
too.
right? It's a
Yeah.
bagel.
Bagel.
I will say the bagel was deeply meaningful for me.
But the
Aaron's
fight
bagel,
scenes
please.
mostly were wire work and practical effects.
Yeah.
Excellent choreography.
And camera cutting.
And
Lots of
googly
cutting, googly eye, and I think the lighting, how they were able to project lighting onto the characters without it kind of spilling out behind them, and then we're seeing what they're experiencing in that moment where no one else can actually see what's happening to them because it's like instantaneous and stuff. I thought I've seen a lot of movies with Michelle Yeoh, and I want to say this is one of her better acting. It's not like I'm just a martial artist. Blah. No, she
was great in
does
Crazy Rich Asians.
Amazing in this film.
Well, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I thought she was good in that too. I haven't seen, I can't think of any Michelle Yeoh movie I've seen where I didn't think she was doing a good job with it.
Yeah, she's top tier. Especially for a movie where a woman just tries to do her taxes.
But to see
Blame
also
Jamie Lee
then,
Curtis on that one.
too,
God, she's so good as a bureaucratic Karen. I loved it.
how you represent a character whose mind is literally being kind of split into 2 different experiences, where that person is thinking about 2 different things, kind of having 2 different life tracks at once. And on the screen, it would actually have this effect where the lens was being kind of split and shattered. So you would see kind of the light refracted in a couple different ways. I thought that was really imaginative and really, really cool. And that seems kind of like everything in the way it was represented. It was imaginative and cool. Even the costuming, I thought was it was imaginative and cool. I'm still processing what I saw, and it's easy for me to kind of.
Yeah, Dan and I have an advantage where we watched this as soon as he was able to get it on digital, and we promptly watched it, and I was blown away. And then we thought, oh, let's do it for the podcast, and we didn't think about the fact that it took us a couple days to really absorb it, and then we asked poor Brian and Aaron minutes after watching it, say, "Hey, give us your thoughts.
Let's
Do it."
talk about it because there's
Be
so
smart.
It's so deep. I mean, there's so many levels of both.
It was a good
spiritual-
film.
It was a great film.
Nobody said that yet. It was well worth watching.
Yeah. I
I
thought
feel
it
like
was
I've seen
implied.
it. I've seen it online so often. I just assumed everyone knew that.
Yeah.
Good call though.
Well,
It's an excellent film.
Have we discussed the basic conceit that
Oh, no.
that life is like a choose your own adventure story,
Uh-huh.
and each time there's a decision branch, there's a new universe created.
That is,
And that's the underlying conceit of the whole film.
which I think this movie does a really, really, really good job of just showing and explaining
Yeah.
and just getting into like what you have to do to access that. It's a really cool, just like mechanic.
How do you have a visual representation of
Yeah.
what the multiverse is? And it does
So
it
I've seen
really
other
well.
movies where they just shake a lot and then blah, 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 and then look forward and then say, oh, now I'm this person from this other universe.
So
It was
we
the
had some
ghost.
interesting takes on our own perception of every time you make a decision, there's an alternate reality that gets birthed out of that. Now, there's certain
Yeah.
decisions that's not going to happen,
Right. Like,
but major
some-
decisions.
Well, I mean, it's the
happens.
butterfly effect. It's how big of a decision can it be, which I think about a lot just in my free time. Like, what is an alternate version of Blake doing? Like, what if I didn't move to Oregon? What if I didn't go to school, just went to school? What if? And I've always want to ask this of my friends, which multiversal version of yourselves would you want to meet?
None of them.
Like, I'd love to. All right. Well, Dan
I-
doesn't know how to yes hand.
No,
I would absolutely love to meet the Blake that stayed in Virginia, went to school at UVA, and just focused on whatever the hell is into in high school, and see where his life went. I'd love to just meet him and say, "What did you do, bud?"
I live so much in the present that like I never like revisit those past decisions of like what if I didn't move away from Minnesota.
Since there's only 5 listeners, I can be very blunt.
you can be as blunt as
You
you
hate
want.
me?
No. I spend some of my time being depressed. If I didn't believe I made the best choices along the way, it would be harder to live.
Yeah. You just have to accept it.
I gotta believe I'm living the best life I could,
Well, and I think
and my life intellectually is great.
but
There's-
I think
there's nothing-
revisiting-
I try not to live with a lot of regrets.
right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean the regret is where there was a branch and you regret the path you took.
Well,
And there's no way of knowing the other path.
Well, I don't
was
regret
better.
it. I'm just curious as to what would have happened if I went somewhere else.
I understand what you're saying, and okay, let me retract that.
We can
there's
absolutely chop all this out.
No.
Well, I
If
was gonna
there's-
say I heard this exactly the same way as Brian. I was thinking like that's just asking those questions is opening a door to unhappiness. Like
correct.
why would I?
But
why would
if
I-
you're
I'm
framing it in a different
occasionally
way,
savagely depressed.
okay, so if you frame it in the aspect of, hey, well, what other lives are there out there? And that's what opened her eyes in her life and accepted where she was, is because she was able to see them. Imagine, and that was part of it. We're not going to plot spoil too much, but just imagine yourself in that other thing.
If you
And-
take option
and you can become
A,
it.
and if you take option A and you have things 1, 2, and 3, then if you take option B, you don't get 1, 2, and 3. You get 4, 5, and 6,
Yeah.
which is about as unspoilery as I can be about it.
It's like a decision tree. Each one branch
Yeah.
is going to open up further branches and choices that that would be opened or closed depending upon.
I've just always
that-
been curious about meeting other versions of me who picked other.
Oh, you just want to
different
meet somebody with a
decisions.
raccoon sitting on your head pulling your hair.
Oh, I can make that happen in real life, bud. You'll have to.
Raccatoonie.
Raccatoonie.
You're gonna have to come pick
Raccatoonie.
me up from the hospital when it happens.
I know. You showed me something earlier where it was like, I'm going to die because I pet something I shouldn't have.
Yeah. So I need to pet a bear, a tiger, a shark. I'm gonna hug a raccoon. It's gonna happen.
That's going to happen, and it's not going to be pleasant.
I'm going to die
Lots of
noticing a
screaming.
cute girl while I'm driving a vehicle. That's
Yeah, well,
Okay, I'm not reaching that high of an aspiration. I'm just gonna adopt a raccoon. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
So there's a bunch of really amazing Asian actors, and I'm glad that they didn't white splain it and put all kinds of crazy other like
the broken language thing was
Yeah.
perfect. It was exactly how multilingual families live.
But you'll notice they really started heavy with the kind of the multilingual English, and then it over the course of the film they did make it easier for English audiences by switching more and more to just English dialogue.
Well, I think there was less dialogue. With more of the action, there was less dialogue.
And it might also be too that it was most of it was outside of the home. In the home, I think it might have been more Cantonese.
Yeah.
Or is it Mandarin? I don't know. I couldn't tell.
I sure don't know. I've just been saying Chinese, and I apologize if I'm getting it wrong. But
So James Hong, who is like the guy, the father,
the grandfather,
Papa,
he's phenomenal.
He's been in so many films. I just can't even imagine like our movie culture without having that representation and people who've been around a really long time.
Yeah.
And then younger people, and then really well-known martial art actors.
Dude,
and then I was really blown away by the casting.
Nostalgia grab for Kei Hui Kwan The husband, he played Short Round and dang it, the kid in the Goonies. But I don't like the Goonies, so I don't remember his name.
Yeah, he was the little smart kid that had like the little puncher thing.
This is his first role in
his
20
pocket.
years.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
He hasn't been acting since then, but he's phenomenal. I hope he comes back.
No, he did an exceptionally good job because there are ways that his character is like a different person.
Yeah.
And from somebody else from the multiverse is like inhabiting his body. And the actor, and actually everybody that made this film had to find a way. How do you represent? It's the same physicality, but there's a different psychology, a different character inhabiting this that's saying what the dialogue is right now.
Well,
And I thought they did a really good job.
Well, I'd argue the physicality is slightly different. Like he carries himself a slightly different way.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the
they
same
have to.
actor. It's the same actor
Well,
in the same
I'm
body.
saying, and I know that,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah.
saying you can carry yourself a physically different way.
Yeah, no,
to
they
show.
do.
Well,
And they do.
They show
Yeah.
that.
Like
I
Moon
mean,
Knight's a phenomenal
when
example
Jamie
of
Lee
that.
Curtis became the professional wrestler. I'm not going to plot spoil it too much, but that's in the trailer.
Saying that just makes people want to watch it more.
It's like and she's going off, and I'm just like, damn girl.
She's
Yeah, but-
amazing. They're all great.
But that actor did a great job. I would say Jamie Lee Curtis kind of was the same character most of the time.
I would say Hot Dog Fingers.
I mean,
maybe there was a different element to her.
She was great. But she didn't change nearly as much as he did.
Correct. I agree.
Yeah.
I
And
agree.
that's why I want to call him out as he did
really
a
well.
phenomenal job
nice
of
job.
split personalities across each multiverse.
Yeah. Hopefully Dan can put in the correct pronunciation. I feel bad about how I tried to pronounce it.
I would say this movie does so many things right. It's deep. It's thoughtful. It's very, very funny. And it has a real sense of humor. And there's also this kind of fun, slapstick, cartoony sort of element with some of the fight scenes and the choreography.
Well, the first big
like
fight
the
scene, that you
Asian
can
type.
hear Looney Tunes style music happen.
But I would say, like, there is some violence. There's some really heady or dark concepts. I don't think it's great for kids.
No.
Make your 10-year-old watch this.
Yeah, no.
There's some sexual content, I
When?
would say, throughout.
Yeah, there's a couple of scenes where things are getting thrown around and used as weapons that
yeah,
are
that's
slightly
right.
not child appropriate. But they would ask, well, what is that, Mommy?
I
And
love
you'd
that
have to
Aaron
explain
forgot it.
Well, a kid is going to look at the awards that we're saying, and then the kid isn't going to have any context. The kid's not going to see what they are. But
Why are they trying to sit on
but the
that?
dildo fight.
During the movie, they see what it's for.
Well, that's true.
So the whole concept is you have to channel something.
Yeah. You have to
To
make a specific
channel-
decision.
There's
to
an
pull
algorithm.
upon.
There's an algorithm that allows you to channel that other
Well,
existence.
you need to make a decision and do an action that is so weird or out of context that it brings you closer to that alternate you in a different part of the multiverse.
and you can connect.
that you can bridge that gap. So it's like, suddenly you're gonna, eat some lip balm or whatever.
You know what we didn't see, though?
What didn't we see?
Beer. We didn't see people drinking beer.
No, she was
I was,
drinking a beer.
I was trying to be subtle so he could
She
cut it
was,
out later.
she was drinking a beer in the lunchroom.
Michelle Yeoh
She drank a
got
beer at the end, but
drunk
nobody,
in the last
but no
scene.
one drank a beer to change over. Like,
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
Michelle
no one went
Yeoh did
into
drink a
no
beer
one into
at the New Year's party.
into psycho mode, slamming a whole thing of Faygo or whatever.
She
But
drank a
we
bunch of
sure
orange
drank
soda.
some beer.
We did drink a bunch of beer.
Let's talk about that.
So Everything Everywhere All at Once, great film.
That's actually how we are on the podcast right now too.
We've chosen
should more put together.
this time around to pick the film ahead of time, and I was like, hey, I'm up in Seattle, and there's a great bunch of breweries, and let's find something to bring down that we couldn't necessarily find here in Portland.
Which you can't necessarily find stuff from other universes in our current universe.
And the first thing that we tried,
I'm gonna drink
we
bee
did two
beer.
dark beers and then an IPA. And this first dark beer was called Sarlacc, not to be confused with the Sarlacc Pit from that one franchise that
the
we talk about occasionally.
the Star Trek man Jean-Luc Riker went into.
Yes.
Jean-Luc Picard.
No, Jean-Luc Riker. I'm really trying to ruin
Jean-Luc Perrault is what I meant to say, but my mouth didn't cooperate.
it. That's very. I would absolutely watch that multiverse series.
Yes.
By the
It's
way,
Luke Starriker.
Star Riker. Yes. No, that
I'm gonna get that tattooed on my back.
with a little star. That'll be your tramp stamp.
I know I'm saying between the shoulder blades, baby.
All right. So Sarlacc Schwarzbier, which means black beer. Schwarz is the German word for black, and
I
the
can
beer is
see.
beer.
I can see your Schwarz is as big as mine.
It is. May the Schwarz be with you. So Jellyfish Brewing Company, which is up in the Georgetown area, south end of Seattle, downtown Seattle. It's a really dark, really nice beer. It's kind of brownish in color for those that did pour
It's pretty
into
dark.
The nice thing is it's thin, and it has a nice kind of biscuity, malty roast on the nose. It's very light. It's very aromatic, and there's even like a hint of vanilla and stuff in with it, but really very dry biscuity with just a touch of dry chocolate. And that's really what a Schwarzbier is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be big, heavy.
Would you
rounded,
recommend this
giant
for
in your
someone
face.
who likes Guinness? Because I know Guinness is dry and light, but also dark. But I know that it doesn't have quite as much flavor as this did.
Correct. We're going to talk about a beer that's very similar to Guinness as
Okay,
a second
okay.
option that we had tonight. Not just picking out a couple beers that were similar to each other. That, Schwarzbier is a lager, and typically stouts are ales. So one's cold fermented, one's hot fermented, or warmer fermented.
That's right.
Yes.
I wouldn't have I think lager. There's kind of a specific sort of
Plaid wearing bearded man who fells trees. Yeah,
no,
lager.
just kind of a smoother taste profile is where I was going to go, Blake.
Correct.
A smoother and this
I'm also right.
it was smooth and balanced, but it had more. It was more robust and there was more complexity than what I would think of normally for a lager.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing about having a darker lager or a Schwarzbier is that it can be really roasty and coffee-ish. And there's versions of it out there. Even in Germany itself, they're all over the map. You can have it be very rich and full, but it's still a lager. Whereas stouts, typically, you can have both ways as well. You can have really thick, heavy, giant stouts that are big alcohol, and then you can have smaller, thinner ones similar to Guinness,
Right.
which we'll talk about, which is that second beer from Counterbalance Brewing Company, which is also in the Georgetown area. And this is called Irish-ish Dry Irish Stout. And this is only... So that first one, the Sarlacc, was like 5.2%, 24 IBU, not super bitter. This dry Irish stout was 4.7% and like 13 IBU. Super, it had a rich roastiness, but there's a difference when you talk about IBU. That's alpha acidity residual. That's not, does it taste burnt? There's a completely different, those are different things. And so this one actually tastes a little burnt.
Dan, as a refresher, what does IBU stand for?
International Bitter Units.
So there's a standard of what tastes like bitter.
No, it's identifying how much alpha acidity is residual or left in the beer, typically by how much hops you've added, which provide that alpha acidityness that I guess you would say it's going to taste bitter, but bitterness can be more than one thing, and this is going to be from
That one specific.
a specific kind of bitterness. It doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you can have a high IBU and it not taste very bitter.
But
you can have a low IBU and have it taste really bitter. This was an amazingly bitter beer, but it has a really low IBU.
I always imagined IBU kind of correlated roughly with hoppiness or the experience of hoppiness.
It does, but it doesn't always. So you can have like
Outliers.
I
anything
think that's
over
the most frequent version because I was thinking the same thing. So I was asking. So I was very thrown just a second ago.
Yeah. So this third one that we had also, this IPA, it only was 44 IBU, but tasted really hoppy. So you can have a hop flavor profile with resins and, the citrus and the tropical and the whatever it is that it has, like minty and lemony and just really strong. But it's not necessarily going to be a lot of IBU because IBU, again, is leftover alpha acidity, which is going to dry out on the back. That's the one thing that you can always remember. If it's high IBU, it's going to be really dry on the back.
So the higher the IBU, the drier it gets on, like after you swallow, and you're
you're just like, oh, it's because that's leftover lingering acids that just sit there on your taste buds and go. "Ugh."
that's crazy how it affects different, like how you make the beer affects how it lands on your tongue differently.
Correct.
That's crazy.
So
I'll just take the water, thank you.
no doubt. I was drinking a bunch of water today too. So
Good
this
man, good man.
Irish-ish dry Irish stout. I actually went to both Jellyfish and Counterbalance, both wonderful, wonderful breweries. And I had both on draft, and now having them out of cans, I appreciate them both. Both beers are really decent, but again, if you side by side, you're like, one's a lager, one's an ale. They look similar, but they taste completely different. They have different approaches.
Of the two of these, what did everyone else prefer? I like the Irish-ish a little bit better, personally.
I'm gonna say the Sarlacc. Actually,
It was
I
good.
guess, I guess I'm a plaid-wearing, bearded lumberjack lager guy.
What are you talking about? We're talking about lager
Okay.
beers, Aaron.
And all right, yeah, I was gonna just go, lumberjack chic on you, but
There's a whole other version of Blake that's gone at this
Yeah.
point.
So of the three beers,
Yes.
I liked the Sarlacc better,
Yes.
but I thought the Irish-ish went better with the film. And the reason why, and Dan, you can tell me why this is, it tasted to me like an used bookstore smells.
Yes.
Musty.
So it's going to have a
Ooh, is
so
that why I liked it better?
A little musty, and that went with this film. Everything, everywhere,
all the
all at
papers.
once.
There's a lot of paper flying around in this movie. So yes.
There's papers everywhere, and it's every idea just thrown out there.
Everything on screen looked
Everything-
used, like lightly
Yeah.
used. Nothing was new in this
Yes.
movie.
And I would also say that there's other beers similar to this that are out there on the market. If you can find either of these two, I would highly recommend it because they're good examples, really good examples of taking these styles and really kind of fine tuning them a bit. So the third one, as Brian mentioned, it was Multiplayer Guild Collab Hazy IPA. This one specifically from Flying
Very
Lion
hoppy.
Brewing. Very, 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 very hoppy.
This
So
one
they
has
use-
the best label. It looks like a Street Fighter screen.
They provided the recipe to a whole bunch of different breweries around Washington, and they all made a version of it, and they just can it, and they have their own logo on the label itself to say this is the brewery that we did it. But it is, and it's supposed to be slightly different because it's always just
And I love that idea of several breweries doing the same recipe and putting their little twist on it.
Iterating on it. That is, I agree.
There's been a number of fundraising and political and social awareness campaigns that have happened in the last few years that you have this recipe, you have a base, you have an idea, and sometimes like the producers of the hops and barley and yeast will provide it for free. Like you can just make it, here you go, but put your tweak and your spin on it. Do whatever you need to do with it to make it your own. And that's kind of what the idea was behind this. This was from Flying Lion, which I also did visit, which is in the
Which also sounds like a fighting game character.
Columbia City area, south of downtown.
I'm thinking like Leon from Tekken.
Oh, I was
Correct.
thinking Star
King?
Fox.
No, King. It was him as King.
I'm sorry, we're distracted.
No, Star Fox is also good.
Yes. So this uses Zappa hops and Mosaic and Columbus. Mosaic and Columbus are going to give you a lot of dank.
Were they grown by Frank?
I don't know. I have never seen a beer made with Zappa hops
I was
before.
going to say,
so
I'm not familiar with Zappa
I'm
hops.
not
I don't think
familiar
I've
with it either.
had. I was
Big
gonna say,
fan of the music.
I liked this. No, it's Moon Unit. I like this beer a lot. I like this beer a lot. I mean, I broke two of the co-hosts. Sorry. I generally in my head I have this idea that that IPAs have been overplayed. That I've had too many of them. That it's kind of it's tired. It's a tired genre. Let's move on to something else. But actually, I think of the three, I enjoyed this beer the most.
Really?
Which surprised me. I don't think it matched the movie the best necessarily,
Yeah,
but
it
I
didn't.
liked how everything was in balance. There were different elements in this beer that I thought balanced each other really nicely.
So
Did you think that everything in that beer was everywhere all at once?
I think it took skills. It learned how to
match
pinky
it.
punch you with some kung fu.
Would
Pinky-
the
pinky
pinky
punch.
punch come from crushing Crispy Boy's cornhole or barrel roll super squeegee?
Crispy
Yeah,
Boy's
he's-
cornhole, no doubt.
So
Dan, you
there's-
shouldn't have let me see the can because now I got all these characters. missing.
Yeah, I know. There's a bunch of really fun, like I would say late 80s, early 90s era kind of pixelated pixel art.
Let me see when Street Fighter 2 got made.
characters.
Oh, that's probably 1996.
Yeah, no, it's very Street Fighter.
94.
It's maybe mid 90s.
It was earlier '96.
I was thinking Super
I wanna
Nintendo.
say-
There was an
yeah.
arcade version that was early, but it's very much that.
it's
that
very
aesthetic.
It has that typeface, and it looks.
Yep.
It's got the like bevel, stuff. going on.
Round 2, fight.
It's
Yes.
definitely going for the nostalgia factor.
And then
for
all the
a,
crowd out there where it's just like, "Arr, arr."
So
I played a lot of this game on my Sega.
So I want to say like the Columbus and the Mosaic. I mean, because this beer dries out. It really, really dries out. It's really the 44 IBU is about mid road for an IPA. Anything above 60, you're not going to notice the difference between. So anything above 60 is kind of like, okay, it's just really bitter.
It's really
on the back.
blows out your
Just
palate.
blows out your palate on the
Yep,
back. I
yep,
mean, so when you think of these like New England juicy IPAs that have like 300 IBUs, I'm like, it doesn't matter because you can only taste up to about 60 anyway before your taste buds shut down. And they're just like, you've burned them. It's going to take a while for that to come back. So if you're going to drink beer in order and you have your option and choice,
Get some water crackers.
do the IPAs last.
Also, water.
Do them last because it's going to burn your taste buds,
Why?
basically.
The palate fatigue is real. It's
we'll cover that later. In the,
So I think all three beers were good.
Oh, yeah,
I would
yeah, they were all
agree.
great.
I think the first two kind of matched the film a little bit better because it's super dark. It turns really dark really fast. Like once the action starts, you're like, what? You
I
know,
would also
crazy.
argue that you'd want to drink something that doesn't distract from the movie because a lot happens. We had to rewind just a couple of times, not a whole lot, but just a couple of times. Just when I got up to get a beer, I blocked the screen a little bit. And there's, throughout the movie, it's a multi-language household.
Yes.
They're speaking both whatever form of Chinese they're speaking and English just back and
Mandarin.
forth.
I'm pretty sure it's Mandarin.
So-
and English.
Yeah. So there's a lot of subtitles. So what we watched had hard coded subtitles for when they were speaking not English.
Yeah. So,
Which
so
is not
you
uncommon.
so you want to drink something that you won't be thinking, oh man, this movie's amazing, and missing what's happening in the movie.
Well, I
'Cause
will-
the action scenes are amazing, but the dialogue driven and just emotional scenes are phenomenal.
I will say, like, this is a movie where you don't want to miss like two solid minutes of it, because you're gonna get lost.
There's
And-
no good time to pee.
And
No.
actually, yeah, at the risk of sharing
had
too
to-
much info with our audience, I had to pee for like 25 minutes, and I didn't want to get up and go because I didn't want to stop seeing what was going to happen in this movie.
Yeah.
And eventually, we paused.
And Aaron, that's the most ringing endorsement you can give a movie.
Yeah.
Well, it really is. Yeah, I didn't want to pee. Like that's where this rates 5 stars. Didn't want to pee.
And there's also a lot of plants and payoffs. There's stuff
Yeah,
in earlier
yeah.
scenes that pay off later that you may miss if you don't watch closely.
There's a lot of foreshadowing going on.
Yeah.
I think it would reward a second viewing just because of those little hints,
right.
just because of the like, and I always think of them as being kind of like visual jokes in a way.
Yeah.
Well,
I felt kind of bad because the story wrote itself, and they were literally, I was saying the line like a second before they were saying it, like these like, oh blah blah blah. I'm like, you've all seen movies like that, and
Well,
that's
it's only
you know what
because-
they're gonna say. It's just like, oh my god, it writes
it's only
itself.
because your multiversal self came in to tell you, oh, you've seen this already. Here's what they say.
Yeah, I apologize because I was like, it just comes out. I just blurted it, and it's like, oh yeah, they just actually really said that.
Well, some lines are somewhat predictable. That's true, and you could, but I hope I didn't get grumpy with any of you guys because it's like, oh man, I just wanted to be like, you know how you can just get sort of pulled in and totally wrapped into a viewing experience, and this is this movie would it's so much up my alley. I absolutely could get totally absorbed into watching it, and that's also I think the other ring.
And I would also say it's a great film to see with other people. I think I enjoyed it way more with these three guys sitting in a comfortable place we could talk.
Cheers, Brian.
These guys over here.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a big screen experience to
No.
go to the IMAX for.
Don't make Dan buy a bigger screen.
Which I am gonna do at some point.
Ah, boy.
But,
Days not enough.
anyway, it's kind of the shared experience enhances this film for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It does.
It does, because this is a movie about relationships. It's about family and chosen family.
It's about
As we
connections
said
on multiple
before.
levels.
And I think all of us.
Oh,
were like,
I love you
oh.
guys.
I was like, oh,
I
I've,
can give or take.
I've experienced that too. It's not just you.
I
Okay,
tolerate
yeah.
you too, Brian.
At this point, we really enjoyed the movie. We really think you should watch it and find something fun and interesting to drink. But I think we've looked and there's a whole bunch of plot keywords. So I think we're gonna attempt.
I got a couple already queued up.
All right, so we're gonna play the plot keyword rename game. Or
Because this one had 156 despite being so new.
yes. So what you do? So
Plot, keyword music.
the plot keyword beer rename game is you go to IMDb. Just don't do it on your phone. Do it on a web browser. Well, you can do it on your phone web browser, but don't do it in an app because
Yeah, the app doesn't
count.
show it.
You want to look at the keywords, and it's on the storyline section. There's a bunch of words and have circles around them, and then a bunch of number, and it says more. And if you click that, it will take you to user submitted keywords from IMDb users.
Which is literally from people who sign into IMDb and tell you what keywords they think match this movie.
And it even shows you how many people said, yeah, that has relevance.
Yeah.
So the more relevant ones are towards the top.
The struggle with newer movies is that you'll get 10 if people haven't watched. Like Resident Evil, it didn't have a whole lot, like the new one. But,
a lot of people watch this movie, though. I feel
but
like
yeah, a lot of this
people
one's been. We're not saying anything new by saying this movie's amazing, but yeah, a lot
Correct.
of people have seen this movie.
So we'll try not to plot spoil it by doing these keywords because there's some really good keywords that are very plot spoily.
with that in mind, what beer do we want to rename? I'm leaning towards the Irish-ish.
Yeah, let's do the
I'm
Irish.
Irishish as well. That's what I was going to go. And if you guys are ready, I'm ready to go first. I'm going
All
to
right, you
rename
go.
the Irishish. I'm going to name it Ape Costume.
All right, that's good. That's good.
Ooh, that's very good. That's in line with what I was going to suggest.
Which is
No Rules Raccoon.
ooh. So you can use the words in combination any way you feel. You don't have
Blake's
to,
not just cheating.
You can actually rename them and reorder them and stuff. Yeah, but you can also just come up with your own. So Brian, thoughts?
I would say it's alternate version of self.
Ooh, I'm 50-50 if I would drink something named that, because I'd be half worried it'd have cybacillin mushrooms in it. I go, this is tasty. Oh no, my fingers are leaving my body.
No, your fingers
I
are
can
just hot
see
dogs.
my brain.
Oh no.
but you would drink something called ball gag bagel.
I don't know if I would.
Definitely not.
I do a taster. I do a taster of ball gag bagel.
There's a
'Cause
lot of
that's where
people
I'm
that would
going.
like that.
It's Portland, man. We're keeping it weird. People be like, "What the hell is that?" I gotta try.
Hey, I'm
that.
keeping it in Portland by saying having raccoon in mind.
Yeah, no, get some of that
Correct.
Mostly just on
BDSM beer.
brand.
That's
All
what
right.
everybody wants.
It's and,
May have a
and-
sit mistress. Smack. No.
yes, and there is a little S&M scenery in it. So again, this is not
Wait,
really
when?
kid appropriate. There's some
Are you
interesting
real?
No.
alternate universes and realities in the multiverse you visit that have some interesting things going on.
God, this
including
movie's
raccoon
amazing.
With butts.
with butts too as well. Yeah, don't stick it in. Yeah, no, we're not going to go there.
Don't plot spoil.
We're not.
People have butts. That's not a plot spoiler.
Wait, you guys have butts?
Yeah, some people.
Let's
speak
end it
out
on
of them.
that.
Oh,
I was gonna say,
there
let's
we
end
go.
it on that.
All right, so
Leave me wondering, does Blake not have an anus?
thank you so much for hanging in there with us. And again, everything everywhere.
We
all at
really
once.
thank you for this.
Yeah, give us opportunity to not plot spoil it too much for you, but thanks for listening. And as always, the opinions expressed during the taping of this podcast are those of the host. And if you don't, like, I was drinking a ton of water. If you don't hydrate,
You're gonna dehydrate over and over and over and over and
a
over
lot.
across all the multiverses.
It's
Yeah.
going to be a bad set of weeks.
it's not
Just-
going to be pleasant.
Just deserts upon deserts.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. I mean, I think I just have run out of things to say because it's everywhere all at once.
That's a lie. You never run out of anything to say. You always have something to say. That's coming
True.
from all the versions of Blake that are here right now. All 20 of us.
Channeling them.
Blake says bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. This is Aaron.
Brian says bye.
Bye-bye.
See, Dan had more to say.